Okay, so we have a couple things, right? Fuel. That's our first thought because, right, that's the most common thing that you think you'd come across. So we have a couple little tricks, right? So we know we need what? We need fuel and we need spark. So when diagnosing a car, shortcuts are what we want, right? We want to get this stuff done as quick as possible, as easy as possible, and we're lazy creatures and we don't want to do more than we need to. So there's a first thing that we can judge. If we take a car that's a crank and no start, and we go over to the throttle body, right? We have the throttle body. Well, most cars nowadays, air goes through there and goes into the cylinders through the valves, right? We don't have any fuel spraying through there, but it is a pathway to the combustion chamber. So if we take some carburetor cleaner, we prefer carburetor cleaner to starting fluid because starting fluid is very volatile, but we could use starting fluid too. And we open up the throttle body, right? We manually twist it open and open the plate, and we take 2 blasts into that throttle body. Close the throttle body, put the air horn back on. We turn the key. If the car farts to life, right? What ignited that? Right? What ignited that? Something ignited that stuff. That means there's spark present. If there's spark present and it ignited that stuff, it didn't have to stay running. It just had to give a little snarf of something. We just proved our spark is good and we don't have to check that. We just proved that fuel delivery is our problem. We don't know whether it's fuel pump yet or it's fuel injector yet, but we know it's fuel and we can focus on fuel, right? So now we go and we check a few things, right? If we have, let's go up here and let's press checking fuel pressure. Images, right? We check fuel pressure. We see it not come up, right? We sit down and we crank, doesn't rise. All right, well, now at this point, what don't we need to check? We don't need to check the Noid light, right? This, we don't need to check with that because it doesn't matter because we don't have fuel present, right? So we're going to go and we're going to check our fuel pressure. And then if we don't see it go up, what are we looking for? We're going back here now and we're going to look at fuel pump. What's in our fuel pump circuit? We get to play the game of finding our fuel pump. Look for the fuel pump. Where's the fuel pump? Hello, fuel pump. Where are you? Fuel pump, fuel pump, fuel pump. Do I hear a fuel pump? I hear a fuel pump. All right. So we're going to go into our fuel pump and we're going to find out what we got going on. Right? We look and we see we got a fuel pump here. Here's our ground. Here's our fuel pump relay. Here's our PCM. And we have a few things that we need to see happen, right? Obviously, if we follow this, right, this is the same one we looked at the other day. Here's our fuel pump signal. Goes into our magnet in our relay. The other side of the relay is grounded. Therefore, what is the computer sending? It's sending it 12 volts. Do I have 12 volts going to it? Right? Even before that, if we wanted to do the easiest thing, well, we got two easy things here. One, everything's in the underhood fuse box, right? So this is a terminal underneath the relay. So I can easily take a paper clip, hook it into a hook, lift the fuel pump relay out, look at the bottom of the relay, and you're going to find 85, right? Or 86, because this is my truck, so this would be a 4-pin relay, and you know how everything's diagonal. We're going to hook it, and we're going to see whether power shows up at it, right? But we can check this fuse real quick, and we can see if that fuse is good, right? Hot at all times, so you should have power on both sides, right? Let's say we go to that and we find a blown fuse. Well, we just found our problem. But did we? Right? So the fuse is blown, 20 amp fuse. That meant that the current on that line exceeded 20 amps. What's our likely component that would cause that? Most likely that fuel pump being bad. Right? So now we see that blown fuse. I wouldn't just throw a fuse in it. I would tell them they need a fuel pump. So we get a fuel pump and a fuse, and we go on with life. But if we want to check our ability to operate, right, we have our relay. We can jump the relay, right? We put 12 volts to this feed going into that relay. This is grounded already, so this guy should click. When this guy clicks, that contact should come over here and supply the pump with power and turn on. Right? So if we take it and we jump this line with 12 volts, we prove the fuel pump relay operational because it clicked. If the fuel pump turns on, we know that fuse is good. If the fuel pump does not turn on, when we do this, let's say we hear it click and nothing happens. Well, now we have to check for power coming in and coming out on its way here. Right? So now let's take this and take this one step further. So let's say we have power coming in and coming out. Let's say that ground goes away. What happens then? Well, the power comes in, comes out, goes through, comes out the other side, and we end up with 12 volts on that lead. So now, right, we have full control of where we're checking. First, we're checking, we have this relay. That relay is totally accessible. We can take that paper clip with that hook, and we can hook the terminal and slide the relay back in and measure our voltage on that paper clip that's around the hook. So we want to see 12 volts come into this, or we want to put 12 volts to this and make this click. Now let's say we put 12 volts to it and it clicks and the fuel pump turns on. Now we want to know why this computer is not supplying that signal. Right? So what are the things that can cause that? Anti-theft, right? Once again, we go in with our scan tool and we look at the body computer and we look to see, first of all, in the engine control module, we should see fuel pump enabled, right? Something along those lines. Is it being allowed to go, right? Those things can come into play. If the immobilizer in the key is saying that's not the key, it's not going to turn the fuel pump on. But let's say, all right, so we're taking this in steps.